Howdy, I'm known as Dimwit, the last mountain man, feared throughout the land. And I'd like to share with you how I reload black powder shotgun shells. And my approach to this is a little different than most, and it's really easy, it's really cheap, you don't need a lot of tools. In fact, I'll show you later with 10 gauge, all you really need are these simple things. But first, let's reload some 16 gauge, and I have some really nice but simple tools for that, and some of them are antique and some of them I made myself. So I'll just go ahead and explain as I go. Let's start with loading this one with a round ball. If this would have a spent primer in it, we would have to knock that out. It doesn't, but I'll show you. I have this little, what I call a loading block that got a hole in it. It's made from a piece of moose antler. I made it. And also made this punch. It's made out of wood with a piece of drill bit glued in it. And that just fits down in here. And I'll put it on my loading block, and I have this little mallet here I made wood leather wrapping, and I just knocked that spent primer out of there. So then we have to put a new one in there, and I have a store-bought tool for that. It's an antique. We'll just put that in there, and we'll take a primer and push it in. I do that down here to get some leverage on it. And so now that's taken care of. This tool is actually meant so you can do another thing with it to push those fiber cushions that they used in here with this thing. And but I'm not going to do that. I'll show you something different. Okay, so it's time for powder. And this was the round ball. I have them color coded so to tell them apart, because we're going to do round ball, we're going to do shot, we're going to do buckshot, and we're going to do buck and ball. So let's see, 3 1/4 drums. If you've seen my muzzle loading videos, you've probably seen this before. It's an antique powder measure. I use that to measure both the powder and the shot. And if you can't get your hands on one of them, you'll get by with one of these modern powder measures. So, and I'm going to use my powder horn. Oops, that's way too much, but that's okay. And then now is where people would put these fiber cushions in there and things like that, but we're not going to do that. We're going to do like I showed you in my smoothbore muzzle loading videos. We're going to put little cards in there that I knock out of milk cartons that have kind of a waxed card, and I use a wad cutter like this. You can buy these on eBay. Doesn't cost much, and this is 18 millimeters in size, and that works nicely for the 16 gauge. So I'm going to put 4 of these down on top of the powder. And then I'm going to put our round ball, and I have some round balls that I have dipped in melted beeswax and also with some olive oil in there. I'll just drop that in there, and later on I will pour some more of that melted beeswax and olive oil mixture in there. You could also take a beeswax candle like this and drip it down in there. And if you can't get your hands on beeswax, you could probably get by with candle wax, but try to stay with things from plants and animals when it comes to black powder, because mineral oil based things don't go well with the black powder residue for some reason. Okay, so that's after we put the beeswax in there, that's ready to go. And there's going to be quite a bit of room, extra room in here, and that doesn't matter. That just goes to show you in modern cartridges, they put a lot of stuff in there to cushion the shot charge. But that's not really necessary, and I'll explain some more about that. So let's try one with just shot. So knock the old spent primer out with this if you have to, and we'll put a new one in. So this was the shot. Okay, I'm going to change my settings here. Like that. And we'll put 4 of these cards on top of the powder. And then we'll put the shot in. And this has one scale for powder in drums and one for shot in ounces. And I made this that I showed before, and it also has the weights and the volumes in grains, because that's kind of what we're used to dealing with black powder today. So I'm going to set it at 1.5 ounces. Yep. And I'll just use the same pouch as I use for a muzzleloader. And then I'll put a card on top. And then later on I'll add some beeswax on top there. The beeswax will do two things. It will keep it all in there so it doesn't come apart, and that's especially important if you're shooting a double-barrel shotgun or a magazine shotgun. And it will also lubricate the bore and keep the fouling softer. So let's try one with buckshot. Doesn't have a primer in it, so we don't have to knock that out. We'll put a new one in there. And we'll change our settings again. I'm going to use 2 3/4. And we'll put 4 cards on top of the powder. Like so. And then we're gonna put 12 of these buckshots in there, and they're 0.319 inches diameter. Let's see. That's 12. And they will stack themselves neatly in layers of 3 at a time. And that's really what decides what size buckshots you should use in a muzzleloader or a cartridge shotgun. It's what size buckshot will fit in there in layers of 3. And you should go by the inside of the bore and not the inside of the cartridge hull, because these hulls are a little wider inside than the bore itself. Okay, and then we'll put card on top. And we'll do one more. This one we're gonna do a buck and bowl, and you're probably familiar with what that is. That is 1 round bowl and 3 buckshots. It goes way back in time. Favorite load of George Washington during the French and Indian War and the American Revolution. So we'll have to put some powder in there, and I think we have the right setting already. Yes, we do. And four cards on top of the powder. And then you can choose if you want when I put the buckshots in first and then round bowl on top, or the opposite. If the round bowl leaves the barrel behind the buckshots, that's going to cause them to spread more. And so it all depends on how much you want to spread those buckshots. And that depends on pretty much how close a range you're gonna think you're gonna be shooting at. So I'm gonna put the buckshots in there first, 3 of them, and then round bowl on top, and then later on I'll put some beeswax on there. Excellent for self-protection if you're out in the woods and things like that. Okay, and the buckshot loads are excellent if you're out on a hunting expedition and you spend the night out in the forest and it's dark and you want something to defend yourself with. Buckshot load is nice because you may not be able to really see what you're shooting at that well. So, powder. I'm using my powder horn. As you see, I made this myself, and it unscrews here, and I can put a funnel in there to fill it up. And this end, and also this end, is made out of moose antler, and this is birch, this wood here. I thought it came out pretty nice. And this strap is bought from Track of the Wolf. And I'm using 1F powder in here. And that's excellent powder to use for muskets, Fowlers, shotguns, things like that. Whether they be muzzleloaders or cartridge guns. Now, a lot of guys will use these fiber wads on in here to kind of cushion the load, so you don't distort the shape of the lead shots. But I don't think that's necessary if you're using 1F black powder. I'm not sure it's even necessary if you use black powder at all. That shock to the lead shots, it's not as great with the black powder as compared to smokeless powder. And before we load the 10 gauge with these simple tools, let's talk a little bit about black powder. When they make black powder, it's a kind of a wet slurry, and they let it dry in these big cookies, and then they grind these cookies down to black powder, and they run it through a series of sifts with different size meshes, and then they get different types of black powder, and they're called, the ones that you should be concerned with guns is 1F, 2F, and 3F. And then there's a 4F that is only supposed to be used in the pan of a flintlock. And the more F's in the name of the powder, the finer the powder is ground. So this powder that we've been using now is quite a coarse powder, and like I said, all these different powders, 1F, 2F, 3F, they're all the same. They came from the same slurry made into cookies and then ground into powder. So they have the same amount of energy in them, but black powder burns from the outside and in towards the center. And when you have a smaller particle powder, like let's say 3F, then you're going to have more surface area, and it's going to be consumed by fire faster, and it's going to release that energy faster and compared to the powder that we're using now. So 3F powder is intended for handguns with short barrels and also rifles of smaller caliber. And I mostly shoot antique guns, and I want to be a little gentle with these guns because they're old. And so let's talk about the pressure curve. The pressure curve of 1F powder that we're using now, it's going to be not as steep, and it's not going to go as high as the pressure curve of 3F powder. So and that's all right, because we can use that long barrel to build speed and pressure behind that load, and we'll get the velocity what we're looking for. And you can get that velocity with 3F powder, but it's going to be a lot harder on your gun, because that pressure curve is going to build steeply and much higher than with the 1F powder. And then you have the 2F powder in there in between. So if you have 2F powder and you got a good quality gun, you'll get by with that. But I do not recommend 3F powder, and I know there's a lot of people that feel that 3F can be used for anything, but I have to disagree, and the black powder factories, they wouldn't make all these different types, and if there was no reason for it. So that pressure curve is something to be concerned with. So stay with the coarse 1F black powder for shotguns and smoothbore muzzleloaders as well. Let's try to